Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 37 of the Survival Project. Today, I'm joined by an amazing lady called Jenn Moore. Jenn has been through years of being undertreated with ulcerative colitis, eventually needing a permanent ostomy, to then discovering that she had anal cancer. The journey didn't stop there, and since she's had multiple hernia surgeries and other complications. Jenn has gone through more than most could possibly imagine. But wait till you hear what she's done with her experience. Jenn is one of the most impressive people I've ever had the pleasure to talk to. Jenn now uses her experience to help other people with ostomies, people who are suffering from chronic illness, people with complex medical histories, post-surgical bodies, rebuild their strength safely through her online and in-person coaching. That's what we call turning pain to purpose. So let's get into it. Jenn, welcome to the podcast. We have been looking at getting this in the book for quite a while now, so it's fantastic to actually sit down and get a chance to have a chat with you. So welcome.
Wonderful. It's really great to be here. I'm super excited to finally have made this happen and get together with you on here. So it's been a long time coming. You're not kidding.
So
Mhm.
Jenn, my first question for you is just going to be, would you like to tell us your story?
Sure. If you want to hear my story, I'll tell you my story. It's quite a long one, so just bear with me on it, and we'll start right back at the beginning. Way back when I was 29 years old, I was going through a lot of trouble with, bleeding and tummy pains and traveling, and just about ended up hospitalized coming in off of a plane just with the amount of blood loss. And I went to my doctor, and my doctor told me at that point that he was pretty sure it was just hemorrhoids. So that was the typical thing back then. I mean, we're talking
Yeah.
22 years ago now, so quite 23 years ago. It's been a while. Um, but it didn't let up at that point. So I kept insisting on him doing some more tests, and we finally sent me over to a gastro doctor, and the gastro doctor went through and came back with I had ulcerative colitis. So that kind of explained everything once I understood a little bit more as to what it was and what was happening. At that point, we went on some medications. It was working for a little while. I went back in, things looked like they hadn't progressed. So fast forward a couple of years more, and I was getting sicker and sicker and sicker. And my family doctor hadn't realized I wasn't seeing my specialist. My specialist wasn't doing follow-up appointments. So my family doctor was just going with whatever he could when it came to medication and trying to do the best he could, and thinking again that I was under care with the specialist on it. And so I did end up going back and seeing my specialist. And my specialist at that point said that everything had progressed and put me on a different regimen of medications. And again, the same thing happened where we have no follow-up, and my family doctor, again, is doing what he can. I didn't realize at that point that my life was starting to get worse almost by the day. And I was quite active. I was working in retail. I was doing all the things, but my life slowly over time just kept getting less and less and less and less, to the point where I wasn't able to function. I was calling in sick. When I was working, I had to have another manager on with me just because I just couldn't get through the entire shift without staying on the floor the whole time and doing what I needed to without sitting in the office for a while and resting. At that point, I was quite active with my niece and my nephew, and they were about, I would say, 4 and 6 at the time. And I went on a hike with them, and they were running like literally miles around me. And I ended up having to stop, and I couldn't start up again. My husband had to help me get back to the campsite. And I realized at that point that my life had taken a really bad turn, and I wasn't getting what I should be, and somehow my life was actually being taken away. Sorry.
You take your time. Take your time.
Um,
It's very
so
hard to go back into these memories, so don't worry. Take your time.
this was a tough one. It really hit me all at once, just sitting there on the cooler looking at my family and realizing that I wasn't part of what it was that they were doing. And I really wanted to get that back. So we finished out the trip. My husband and I got back and we started having a real conversation about what was happening and trying to look for support. And at that point, I found Crohn's Colitis Canada, and it literally was the beginning of everything that changed. I found a community of people that understood. I figured out from talking to them that I was not on medications that were working. I wasn't supposed to be getting sicker. There were things out there called biologic drugs that could possibly help me. And they recommended me over to one of the gastros that works at a diamond clinic in Vancouver, and he is amazing. Him and his team, they run research studies. He still teaches over at UBC, the university there, and they constantly have interns coming through. So they're always top of everything that's going on, and such a kind man. And he went in, and I went in for my first visit with him, and it was literally about an hour and a half of a visit, and I'd never had a doctor spend that much time with me, especially trying to figure out what's happening. So he spent about an hour and a half trying to figure out my history. He was quite upset because we'd realized at that point that I'd basically gone about 15 years at this point without a lot of support and being pretty much untreated. So for him, he's dealing with someone who's in severe flares at this point. For him, it was a matter of trying to figure out like where to start without having a history in there. Like we found everything that we could, my medical history, and there was nothing for him to work from. So I can just imagine from his standpoint how frustrating it was. So he wanted to make sure that he had a full picture of everything. So he actually recommended that I go on some of the test biologics that were coming through at that point. We'd figured out that I actually have an allergy to steroids, which is one of the things that was causing so many problems over the years, was I have an allergy to steroids. You're not supposed to have a heart rate of 180 when you're sitting there doing nothing. Who knew? So he pulled me off of that. That's not even an option anymore. So we started trying some of the experimental type drugs, but they were all in like phase 2, phase 3 of studies. So they were in the stages where he knew that it was going to be helpful if they were going to work. So the very cool thing with that was he was able to, because it was part of a study, put me through the complete background with the medical history. So they got a chance to look at everything and keep an eye on it and get a really clear picture of what was happening, what was going on. Here's the problem though. We're still in it 3 years later. I was still in the middle of flares. We'd gone through 5 biologic drugs at the time and nothing was working. So he ended up deciding to send me over to another doctor for surgery to look at the options when it came to an ostomy. And I went through and we decided on going through doing the ostomy surgery as nothing else was working at that point. We knew with colitis that would be at least getting rid of the flares and then we could deal with all the other things that were happening at the same time. So we opted for the permanent ostomy, the Barbie butt, the whole bit. And I didn't want to go through a lot of surgeries. I just wanted to have it one and done and get back to living my life. So we did that. The surgery went very well, or so we thought. And I know there's always more. So we thought it went very well. I went in for my follow-up visit on my 4-week mark just to see how I was doing. Again, everything was healing. And at that point, he let me know that it was a good thing that we decided on a permanent ostomy because it would have been permanent. I actually apparently also had anus cancer. Oh, this
Oh my God.
was mind-blowing. So he did make sure I brought my husband with me to the appointment. I was sitting there going, why do I need to do this? Like, I'm doing okay. And that was why. And it was interesting because I asked him, like, why didn't you tell me after surgery? And he said, why would I do that? You know, I've given you 4 weeks where you can focus on healing. There was nothing we could do with it in the meantime. We can't do any of the follow-ups at this point. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to look at it. Now at this point, we're going to figure out what to do. So we need to get you to go see, a gynecologist as well. I'm like, why is that? And he says, well, the strains were coming back to HPV. So I know that you had a history when you were 18 of cervical cancer. We went back through the history. It's all there. And I had cervical cancer from 18 to 22. We thought it was all gone. Didn't know that it could spread into other things like this. It's just not one of those things that they were looking for. I mean, I've been with my husband since I was 17 years old. Nobody thought of it. And so we went over, saw the gynecologist, and she said, everything's clear. So everything's good that way. But at that point, I'm again dealing with another doctor who's very upset because at this point she's going, why has nobody given you the shots? The HPV shot might have been able to prevent this from happening and, turning it into the anus cancer because it's still in your body. So they don't know that it would have, but it's a good possibility that it would have. I said, well, I've been with my husband, my same partner for, I was going on, would have been 28 years at that point, 29 years, somewhere in that time frame. So I guess nobody thought about it. I'm older. They're really focusing on the kids. Yeah. So that's the blows that came with that one. And then I'm sitting there going, okay, well, this is it. We know we've got that. We're good. I have a permanent ostomy now. Life's going to be great. It took me 10 months, I'm going to say, for the Barbie butt itself to actually heal and be able to get back to activities, which that's normal for some people. My surgeon just kept saying, it's fine. Everything looks good. There's no infection. Your body's just taking longer. And I kept asking him, I'm like, why is it taking so much longer? And he says, well, coming into it, you were very malnourished. Right? Like I'd gone from being a healthy 135 pounds with muscle and everything else. And in less than 10 months, I was down to 117 pounds when I went in for surgery. So that pulled a toll on the body. And then when we were coming out of it, I was having trouble with just absorption with nutrients and trying to get that all through. And I mean, you have an ostomy, you know what I'm talking about with this and trying to get that to balance out. So that's how we ended up going. And when it finally did heal, everything was going well. I got back to doing, my physical activities. I got back to training my clients. And all of a sudden I started getting this growth happening. And I'm like, what is happening here? And it's coming up underneath the actual stoma. And it didn't make any sense. And I'm like, okay. Like you said, I have a good core strong, like a good core. Like I'm quite strong. What's happening? So I'm going, there's no possible way I've got a hernia. How does that happen? Well, I'd had a hernia, the parastomal hernia, and it just kept growing. So there we go, back to see my surgeon. He has a look at it and he's just like, yeah. And he goes and he looks at all the imaging. And what had happened is when they did the surgery, everything was so swollen. I'm sure it's normal, but the bowel itself was so swollen. And then as it healed, it's just kept pulling further and further away from the outside of the hole there. So it actually created its own hole there. And he's like, and I'm going, okay, so it's not from getting back to weights. It's not from anything to do with that. He said, no, this is just, it didn't heal as well as it could have. This is how it healed. We knew that it was taking longer for everything else to heal. And there was no way I was going to be able to prevent that one. Again, we didn't look at hernia belts or anything at the time because, again, I'm strong. My core's always been strong. So he figured, my core is actually stronger than any of those belts are ever going to be. I'm like, okay, you've been inside my body, And he says, yeah, it's just one of those things that happens. So I started doing some research on it and I found it quite interesting because we know that it's usually about a 50% chance that people are going to end up with a parastomal hernia. That's with belts, without belts. And it's just how it is. But what I found very interesting once I started digging even further is there was two more pieces that came into play with this. So one of them is the fact that women, we actually have thinner abdominal walls than what men do. So it is more common for us to get the hernias, period. Not a huge percentage, but, decent enough. That's something to be aware of. And then the other piece is the effects. It kind of could be my interpretation of how I'm reading it, but it's probably true. But the effects of the long-term steroid use on the actual fascial tissue. So we're putting a big hole in our bellies when we get the stomas, right? And if the fascia is not super strong around it, regardless of all the other pieces, then we could be looking at, let's say, higher risk. So this is all good, but there's more. Okay.
Oh my God.
I'm sorry, it just keeps going. So we get through this surgery here. And again, we go in because of the state of the medical system after COVID. My first surgery was in August of 2020. So right in the height of COVID for the world. My second surgery would have been 2023. I believe it was January of 2023 by the time we actually got in to go and fix the hernia. So by that point, it had grown to a decent size. When he went in to repair it, there was so much damage that was done that he ended up having to keep it in the same site, but pretty much rebuild my stomach on the inside around it. I was having a lot of problems with blockages and pain. And he said what had happened was basically I had 10 more inches of intestine in there that had died. So that's where a lot of the problems were coming through because I was having a hard time being able to actually push everything through and get rid of it. So there was a lot of reconstruction that had to happen with that. So it's all good. We get through the surgery. It ended up, I think he said it was like a 6-hour surgery. It was quite complicated. Spend another 3 days in the hospital. I'm like, okay, everything's great. And then I'm like, okay, get back to doing things. Everything heals again. And then I start getting that familiar feeling and that bulge is starting to happen again. And I'm like, what is going on here? Because this was only, I'd say, maybe 4 or 5 months after they repair. So I called him up and I'm like, what's happening? He goes in, we go get all the imaging done and everything. And he said, the stitching, it didn't hold. I'm like, okay. Well, again, we're waiting on a surgical wait list and I'm looking probably about 11 months later at this point. We get another imaging done and he has a look at it and the hernia itself had grown to 8 inches by 12 inches by 14 inches. That's massive. I'm only 5 foot tall. So that was quite a bit on the one side. And the amount of pain that I was in on a daily basis with that was just insane. And I mean, that's even compared to having colitis for that length of time. So we finally go in and we fix it. But this time we can't fix it in the same spot. So he literally has to close all that up, move it over to the left side. And so now I have a stoma brand new over on the other side and everything's good. So it's been resited. We're like, okay, so this is good. We're on a completely clean playing field on it. We're going to be good. So go through, get the surgery done. The surgeon was amazing. They were talking first about doing full surgeries where they have to cut everything open. Up until now, I've been able to do laparoscopic. So he's like, we're going to probably have to cut it all open. We're probably looking at mesh. Mesh is a problem. I'm allergic to adhesives. So he's like, I'm just not sure how that's going to work. Yeah, you know what I'm saying. So I'm like, okay. So I didn't know entirely what to expect, but he gave me to one of his newer surgeons and she just thought so far outside of the box. So when she went in to do the surgery, she's like, we're not putting any more holes in here than we have to because it's already like Swiss cheese. Okay. Right. You got to figure the size of that pouch that they took out even. She's just like, they put 42 stitches internally to try and sew that thing up. So she looked at it. So she actually ended up going through the original stoma site and did everything in through that one to be able to rebuild what she needed to on that side and then build the new stoma coming out on the other side. So the only new hole I actually ended up was for the drain. That was it. Everything else was done through the old stoma site. So from a healing standpoint, that's massive. And to not have to actually have, full open surgery for my chances down the road of, no more hernias, being able to get back to work quickly. Everything looked really good, but there's more. So we went, I know at this point I can only laugh at some of it. So the surgery itself went really well. Everything went so good. They put me in a room with 4 people. My roommate the guy right beside me had a cold while we were in there, and I went home with a cold. So I was literally, I have a surgical binder on because we're trying to make sure this doesn't happen again. 2 weeks out, big sneeze from the colds, and I ended up with another hernia. So I can't even, because I'm just, again, there's nobody, this isn't anyone's fault. This isn't anything anyone has done. This is just the reality of what we're dealing with here. And I'm just like, are you kidding me? And angry doesn't even describe it. And at what?
Yeah, of course.
There's nothing
of
to be
course.
angry at. And it's just like, okay. So, and I knew it. So again, waiting for everything else to happen again, going through, when did the surgery? It would have been January of 24. So have to get back in to see my surgeon. He refers me over to another surgeon that can do it with a robot this time, because they figure that this is going to be the best chance, because they can get in there with the least invasive, best chance of success. They can get in really tight. They can make sure everything's closed properly. I'm like, okay, we're going to do this. So go get the imaging so they can see what they're dealing with. I finally saw her last Tuesday. So again, long time coming with the wait list for both surgeons. And then she presents me with 4 different options to be able to fix this thing. And all of the options is just like you're trading off one thing for another. She's the whole time going, you're very much a glasses half full person. I'm like, I'm very much a glasses half full person. I'm actually one of those people that look at everything as a glasses refillable, right? There's always going to be a chance. There's always hope. And she says, okay, well, I always look at the worst case scenario. So between us, we're going to come up with what makes sense. And I'm like, okay. But the best part with that is she told me all the ins and outs of every single surgery, broke it down so well so I could actually make a really good informed decision. The worst of the whole thing, though, is, like she says, I'm still young. Like, I'm only 51 at this point, I think. Yeah, I'm 51 right now. So I'm still young when you look at how long I'm probably going to have my ostomy for. And so she has to look at realistically down the road. There is a chance I'm going to be going in for surgery again at some point. So no matter what it is that we're looking at, you have to put it in place with, that's a possibility. You do have to think, longer term, because one of the options was they basically do something called a tar repair, where they actually put the mesh in between 2 layers of the muscle. So, but it's a newer process that's coming out right now. It's the best chance of success and the best chance of not having a reoccurrence. However, it also creates like this barrier. So if you end up with needing something else down the road, it makes it very, very difficult for them to be able to help you. So we have to look at those things. So yeah, so right now, this is where we're sitting. We've made the decision. I know I'm going with the sutures with the mesh taping on it. Decent chance of, success, at least for years, and then I can get back to my life. So hopefully that's going to happen in the next couple of months, and off we go.
My God, Jen, I am hoping and praying that this is the fix, because you have been through torture.
Yeah.
My days. And first of all, I just want to circle all the way back to the moment of sitting on the cooler and the despair that obviously you felt, and then the despair of realizing that you weren't getting the medical treatment that you deserved to help you, and the despair of then the last option being surgery, which has had then now a trigger effect on everything that's come. But you have moved from that despair to brightness. Like the way you talk, as you said, the glass is refillable. Like that just is like it tickled something in my brain. I was like, wow, what a perspective to look on it. And for you to be able to speak the way you speak after everything you've gone through, I think I would have gone in the river a long time ago. You are a powerful, strong, I don't have enough words in my vocabulary to describe the strength you must have to go through the physical and mental torture that you have gone through over the last couple of years. And in the same sense as well, you help other people rebuild their cores. Like the reason that we got in contact was Alex completely credits you with him getting back kite surfing, snowboarding, running ultramarathons. The knowledge you have in your mind to be able to help people, and then unfortunately there's just problem after problem arising with your own thing. Like that is just torture. What are you doing, I suppose, we know the physical health is a problem, but mentally, how do you kind of work through all this?
I look at it a couple of different ways. Part of the reason I chose to work with the demographics I work with, and I've got people that have MS, like, seniors. I've been working with seniors for years. And basically it's the people that people don't have patience for, and it just blows my mind that they don't want to do the research. They just don't think they're worthy of help for some reason. And it drives me insane. And I'd love to help those people, because for me, it's always, I can look at it as, no matter what, my experience can actually help me with that understanding and compassion to be able to help that person. And I will do the research. I know what it feels like to not have that support. And I think that we need to have more people in the world that are willing to help them. So that's kind of how I look at it. I love taking on people that actually deal with more than what I've dealt with, because it helps, if that makes sense.
Wow, Jen, you are empathetic and an absolute powerhouse. I literally, as I said, I do not have enough words in my vocabulary to describe just how impressive you are as a person. That is just something else. I'm just going to get you to dive into to explain to people what exactly is the type of work that you do.
I am I was a retail manager for 25 years before all of this. And again, I made that decision when I had to change my own health. I started falling in love with fitness. We went and got a personal trainer because I was just like, well, I don't know what to do, but I know I need a better life than this. And I thought that, getting physical would actually help me do that. Turns out I was right. So empower yourself to feel strong and you will be strong. I honestly can't imagine doing any of this over the last, well, I'd say especially the last 10 years without having that good base to work from, and just being able to push yourself around in your hospital bed without having to call your nurse every time you want to move I think it helps a lot with recovery. So, but the people I help, and I mean, I found the road because there was nobody to help me. And as we were going through trying to find trainers to help us, we interviewed a lot of different places, and a lot of them had no idea how to maneuver bodies like mine. At that point, I just had ulcerative colitis. I didn't even have an ostomy yet. And we were in one of the gyms. I was working with a trainer, and she said, "What are your goals right now?" I said, "My goal's pretty simple right now. I want to be able to run a 5K." She looks at me and she says, "Anybody can run a 5K." I'm like, "Well, I can't." And I went home that day and I said to my husband, "This is crazy, but I'm going to go be a personal trainer and help people not feel like that." He's like, "Okay." I have the most supportive husband in the world. He's like, "If that's what you want to do, that's what we're going to do." He says, "You have a lot of learning that you need to do." Because at this point, I was like 37 years old. All I'd done is retail. So it was a big learning curve. I have my own health history to go with it. And I do have empathy and I do know how to talk to people. So I'm like, well, I could just take those skills and then just learn the technical side of it. So I went and decided to be a personal trainer. Personal training is great, but it doesn't give you a lot of the background that you need to be able to help people with the more complex things. So then I went and decided to become a health coach at the same time. So I'm also a certified health coach. That gave me a lot more of the understanding of the overall how to help a person as an entire being, not just from the let's just go do a workout. Still not enough on there. And so I decided to go and learn the nutrition pieces of it. So I did the precision nutrition level 1, like that's awesome. Still not enough. I went through and did the full 1-year internship with them and did the precision nutrition level 2, which really got more into how do we deal with bodies that are not the norm? How do we deal with people that need a little bit more? So that gave me a lot more understanding of how to work with people on a bigger spectrum based on what it is that they're actually dealing with. So in all the different fields, while working with their medical teams, because we have to be careful about scopes on things like that, what our scope of practice is. But it did give me a good background with that. So that's my specialty is I work with people that have complicated medical histories, people that have ostomies, people that have chronic illness is where their realm is, and basically those that nobody else wants to touch.
You have completely turned your life experience into a purpose. It's a beautiful thing to see, and you're helping people from your own life experience, the people that no one was able to help, probably from a fear of not having the knowledge, but also maybe even a lack of empathy, lack of understanding.
Yeah.
Like that experience you had with that woman, everyone can run a 5K. Such a privileged statement to make for someone
Yes.
that has obviously not, and they're lucky they don't have the life experience that others have, that you could come out with such a, ridiculous sort of comment. But you have absolutely found a niche and you're doing fantastic stuff to help people. Like, because I'm telling you, Alex was singing your praises. Like, absolutely. I was like, I need to speak to this woman.
Oh my gosh, he's amazing.
Oh, what a guy. What a guy. What a guy.
He is. I'm honestly so lucky to have been able to connect with him. Someone that just has so much heart and wants to work so hard. It's insane.
Completely. And I'm sure you meet so many fantastic people through the work you do, because the people we find that slip through the cracks, the people that kind of get forgotten about, are the people that are the most empathetic and the people with the most life experience. Yeah, I'm sure you meet fantastic people. I know I'm lucky. I meet fantastic people like yourself all the time now, and it's like I feel privileged to hear these stories. From your work, I suppose what I want to dive into is a lot of people that will listen to this could be post-surgery. I know 2 people specifically who will be listening to this episode who are heading for surgery in the next 2 months. What advice would you give to them? Their core muscles are going to be shattered again. What advice would you give them, and the steps to come back, I suppose?
Well, the steps, if you would hope that people would be able to have enough of a heads up that they can actually start working on some of it beforehand. Even the smallest little things like just going for walks, making sure that even when you're laying in bed, that you actually contract your muscles, release your muscles, and just keep them working and keep that mind muscle connection happening is going to help immensely once you get over to the other side of the surgery. It sounds really crazy, but really focusing on your basic core exercises. So you're working on your glute bridges, your bird dogs, doing your clams, like all of those things is going to give you that strong structure around the hips, around the center area. If crunches, I mean, for most people, I'm not a believer with ostomies to really go into the whole crunches or the planks until you're really like far along on that recovery journey and you know that everything is actually buttoned up tight and the internal healing has actually happened. Because we see the layer all the time, but you want to get into that deep, deep layer of healing. That's not, 3 months later. You're talking 6 months, even to a year down the road with that. And so many people go right into, oh, I'm going to start doing planks. Please don't. Please don't. There's a lot of other options that we can do instead of that. So I'm going to say your best bet is really starting with the basics. So as soon as you can get out of your bed and walk, start walking. Walk as far as you can. Take your breaks when you need to take your breaks. As you're walking, make sure that you're, squeezing your glutes when you're, taking that step. Make sure that you're actually, staying up nice and tall and zippering everything up so that you're keeping a good posture. You're not leaning into it. And that'll help reinforce your core muscles as you're trying to rebuild them. And then even if you're in your bed, like doing your little heel slides, just pulling those feet back in, doing your glute bridges as high as you can, doing pelvic tilts. So starting with the really small things. When the small things feel easy and doable, then you move up to the bigger things. I'd say even before you get down onto the ground, working on balance, like just stand on one leg. If you have to hang onto a counter, hang onto a counter. So that's kind of where I would start with it, is like really taking it back to simple movements. As your simple movements feel good, progressing it. If you're really not sure where to start, or if you don't know any of these things, I would recommend reaching out and finding someone that actually knows how to help you with that. So there are physiotherapists all around the world that specialize in people that have ostomies or have more of the complex surgeries that they can help you with at least getting started and doing it safely so you don't end up with problems down the road that you didn't ask for.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great advice to go to the experts like yourself. And don't worry, I'll put all your details in the caption, because I'm sure there's plenty of people who are going to have a lot of questions.
I'm happy to answer questions.
I know myself, I have a parastomal hernia at the moment. Always used to wear a belt 24/7, to be honest. I wear like a small belt to kind of just keep it kind of tidy sort of thing. Never had any core issues until my third surgery. And then last year I was in the gym, picked up a weight, wasn't even all that heavy. And it was like something pinched me in the stomach. I thought, ooh, something not right there. Went in anyway, took the stoma thing off, and I saw this bulge. And stupidly, I just thought, okay, I need to push this back in, and I pushed it back in. So it disappeared for a little while, and then I got home and I was like, that's coming back out. Now, I was recommended that I don't go the surgical route, that it would actually just make it worse for the position that it's in. So I've been doing the slow kind of core movements to bring it back. Now, randomly, it got really, really strong, and I took a break from my own training for the last while, and it's kind of protruding a little bit again. So I suppose it kind of speaks to how paramount it is that you have to maintain the core exercise and keep building all the time.
Yes.
Getting the foundations in place. I know myself, I need to go back focusing on my core. So this is such a reminder for me. I'm like, get down, get them bird dogs done.
They're important, right? If you want to do planks, like do bear crawl planks. They're harder, but they're very, very effective and very safe for people with ostomies. So
yeah, that's it. And it's finding the ones, like you said, as crunches. I remember when I first started doing crunches, because I had no experience. When I first went back to the gym with the lads, started doing crunches, and I was like, oh, my belly does not like these. I didn't get any hernia around that, but I've refrained from doing them. I do toe touches and different things like that now to help it. But for people who are a couple of months into their stoma journey, they're trying to get back into the gym, what advice would you have them 6 months down the line, lifting safely? What are the first steps to take?
Well, the first steps are, I don't recommend necessarily belts unless your surgeon or your doctor tells them. However, it is not a bad idea to have a wrap, because it's a reminder, right? So you're going to feel that little bit of tension around you and you're like, oh yeah, right, I should be careful of that area. And that's all it is. It's just that little bit of a reminder. So when you're getting back in, like the biggest things is go slow. Okay. Try one round of everything first. Just do like 5 reps, see how it feels. If anything feels like it's pulling, pushing, protruding, don't do it. And if you're talking like 5-6 months down the road, I would still be very careful with the core exercises. So stick to things that are either with bands. Cable machines are fantastic for giving you that feedback that way. That's the biggest pieces. I think the biggest piece is going slow. Cool. Yeah, recognizing that it's okay to not do everything that you did before your surgery right away. Some are very, very athletic, especially if you're going in off of like an emergency surgery type thing and you didn't expect this to happen. You're going to want to go in and do all the things you used to be able to do. Be kind to your body. Let it tell you what you can and can't do, but you really have to take it slow and be mindful of all the movements, like really into it. Because like you said, you were doing things and all of a sudden you're like, whoa, oh, that doesn't feel feel good. A lot of people may not recognize that, so you have to listen to what's happening as you're doing movement.
Yeah, I think we become so in tune with our bodies as well, but sometimes we can, I don't know, fall a bit out of tune. We might have the earphones in, we might be thinking about what we're going to have for dinner, we might be arguing
Yeah.
with someone in our head that annoyed us earlier. So I suppose when you're in the gym, you really have to be mindful about what you're doing, to be really focused on the task at hand, because as much as we get back to life, and a stoma can actually be a whole new lease on life for people, you
Hmm.
do have to adapt, and you do have to remember that there are certain structures you have to have in place. So that is fantastic
Yes.
advice for people.
Yeah.
When it comes to people you've coached and people you've trained, what are the kind of most common mistakes or misconceptions they'd have before they start back on their fitness journey?
They think that it's going to be faster than they thought. That's a big one. I'll be able to do everything I used to do in 3 months. I'm going to be totally back on my feet. Meanwhile, that is not the case, especially if you're brand new to an ostomy, or actually even with when you're dealing with just Crohn's and colitis, same type of thing. So understanding that you're going to be more tired, like most don't understand exactly how taxing some of that is, especially if don't have your hydration under control yet. Like if you haven't figured out your water absorption, then that's going to hit you hard. Understanding that we need things like electrolytes when we're going into the gym. We absolutely need to be able to do that. And we have to keep our muscles, because we will feel the muscle soreness more than what most people do, especially in the beginning until your body starts to get used to it. And it's been through a lot, and you have to just be kind.
Yeah, it's great advice, because I suppose we could start to push ourselves and not be kind to ourselves, because there's a
Hmm.
frustration that can build up after surgery where you think, oh, I want to get back to my life, I want to get going. But to
Yeah.
remember that you have to go back into yourself to come back out of yourself a little bit, and having patience to know that you will get back, but rushing it. I know I rushed into lifting up shopping bags after my last surgery.
Yes.
Because my parents were like, do not pick up that shopping bag. And I was like, I'm
Yes.
going to get that shopping bag. But
Hmm.
the first time I did it, I remember feeling a bit of a pinch in my stomach, and that probably could be where the hernia maybe started.
And that's the time that's the thing that's really hard, is because I've talked about this time a few different times, but we going from being afraid of doing anything that the surgeons are telling us we need to be so careful. And sometimes it's before surgery, again, depending on where you're coming from with that. Some spend years being told, don't lift more than 5 pounds. Be very careful about that. And then all of a sudden, you go and you have your ostomy surgery, and all you want to do is get back to doing all of the things that you weren't able to do during that time. Or you have the flip side where you're afraid to do anything. You live in that total fear of, oh, I might get a hernia. I don't really want to move too much, or I'm going to get too tired. So it's finding that balance for yourself, for what is, pushing you forward and helping you live, and what is going to take away from your ability to actually continue to progress.
Yeah, slow and steady wins the race. I know it's a cliche, but it is absolute fact. And just taking
Absolutely.
your time to trust your body again. You can step outside your comfort zone too early. It can just be detrimental to that trust that you have for going forward. And you could start your fitness journey too early, which might stop you from continuing your fitness journey.
Yeah.
So yeah, just
Yes.
having that patience and taking the time. Um, how do you find the emotional impact on yourself from meeting people who are suffering with chronic illness or having tough times, but you obviously are having a positive impact in their life, but I'm sure there are harder days.
Overall, I find what I do extremely rewarding. Like, I love being able to give back and give back to a community. Without the community, I would not have been able to find my path and find the help that I needed. And that's something that I always have to remember. But on the flip side, some days are really hard. Like when I'm on a call, doing a virtual call with one of my ladies that have MS, and they're doing all of the things, then all of a sudden they just can't. And they'll break down in tears. And it's everything I have in me to not also break down in tears with them, and to still be there and be that cheerleader, be that support, and help them move into something that they are capable of doing. So with some of these things, it's wonderful. Like people with ostomies, continuously I get to see them doing better and better and better and better, and taking on more challenges as they get stronger and they learn to trust themselves more and start experimenting. But then you have the flip side of those that I know their life, we can control it so much. We can give them such a good quality of life while we can, but no matter what, they're still facing some of those barriers, and doing the best we can to help them through them and support them with it, and still have the best chance for as long as you can possibly give. Um, and then the flip side on that is also being, for some, support for their families, because their families, they understand to a point what they're going through, but unless you live with some of this, it's hard to understand it. And we as people don't always explain it well to loved ones to be able to support us in the way they need to. So that's kind of a role that I've taken with some of the families, is being able to help be a little bit more of a voice for the person that's in it. And it's a different way for them, because they have somebody they can ask questions that's not of their loved one, that may or may not be able to answer it fully for them, or may not worry about their feelings a little bit
Yeah.
when they're talking to them.
How
Yeah.
fantastic is it to have that bridge? Because in a one-on-one conversation, it can be very hard, and sometimes we don't actually say what we mean to say. Whereas if you you can think, maybe write some down. You can go to someone like yourself who's the bridge to make you understand what possibly support you need to offer
Yeah.
your family member. For someone who's listening to this and they have a family member who is experiencing chronic health issues, they're not sure how they're going to help. What advice would you offer them?
There's support groups out there absolutely everywhere. I know, like with Ostomy Canada, we visitors in the Ostomy Canada program will actually speak with the families as well to try and help them understand what their loved one's going through. When I was Crohn's and Colitis Canada, it was the same thing. Like the people in there are more than happy. We know cancer foundations, because that's one of the big ones. They have people that will counsel the families as well. So if you have questions and you're not really comfortable having that conversation with your loved one, or for whatever reason just don't want to, then there's definitely the resources out there to talk to people. And it does help a lot. I know my husband, he's talked to a lot of different people outside of just speaking with me, and it's helped him understand what I go through more so even sometimes than I do, or to know what's coming up that I may not see. And it's been a big help. So reach out, look for the support groups. And if they're not there, speak to the caregivers that you currently have. They will know who the support groups are.
That's fantastic, because these support groups exist for a reason, and how lucky we are that the people put these initiatives in place to help us. Like we've Crohn's and Colitis Ireland here in the UK, Crohn's and Colitis UK, and I know myself, my own journey, I would be lost if I hadn't had the support of Crohn's and Colitis Ireland to help
Yeah.
me along my journey and answer questions and give me opportunities to meet other people to learn from. So I only recently spoke to a guy in the United States who had been only recently diagnosed, and he said to me, he's like, there are no support groups, but that obviously was because that was his understanding of it. He hadn't obviously maybe done the right Googling. He himself didn't actually know anyone else with IBD, so he had no one to kind of open the door, no one who'd been there
Right.
before. So I was able to point him in the right direction. So I think it is definitely great advice for people is to reach out, look online. There's such community online, whatever the chronic illness you're experiencing, or even it's mental health issues, whatever it is, find someone online who's speaking about what you're going through and maybe reach out to them, because they have been there before, they have the experience, they know where the information can be got. So that's fantastic advice for people. One thing I'd like to speak to you about is, as we get older, our bodies can change. And one thing that came up for me that I did not have a realization of at all was I spoke to a woman who, when she got her stoma, she had less weight on. And as she put on some weight, when she got healthier and she started absorbing food again, but her stomach changed. And she said suddenly she had these kind of almost rolls of skin now that had changed, and her stoma had actually fallen into the pocket of it. So it actually made it so hard for her to put her stoma bags on. For someone like that who's maybe fearful of, as their body ages, their body changing, what steps can they take to maybe ease some of that fear and ease the physical changes?
There's a lot of different things, especially for women. Well, men's bodies change too, but women seem to have those bigger changes over certain periods that we keep hitting. The first thing I would say is go to the doctors and get the tests done to make sure that things like your thyroid are in check properly, things that like your blood work is all okay, that if it's a menopausal thing for women, that they're getting the support that they need or may need, and have those conversations with their doctors. Because if it's as simple as a thyroid and you need medication for that, that will take care of it by itself. Your other pieces with it is understanding physical fitness is a big piece. Absolutely. Nutrition is also a big piece. So you want to make sure that you're actually absorbing the food that you should be getting. You want to make sure that you're getting the nutrients that you should be getting. So again, that's going to be your blood work with your doctor. If there's something that's messed up with your iron, even, it can affect your ability to actually put on muscle, which will long-term maintain your weight. So that's going to be the big things.
It's great advice for people. This has been absolutely fantastic. One question that I love throwing at people, because I love getting their perspectives on it, is, what does happiness mean to you?
It means being able to do all the things I want to be able to do. So I want to be able to go on a hike with my niece and my nephew. They're much older now, but I want to be able to go on a hike with them and be able to keep up. I want to be able to know that when I don't have my own children, so I have to rely on them when they have children, that I'll be able to get on the floor and play with them. And just doing work that I love doing and interacting with people and knowing that what I do makes a difference in the world. That's my big thing to make me happy. Besides my husband, he always makes me happy.
He sounds like a fantastic man. Isn't it great to have someone you can communicate with and someone to go along the journey with you? So it's absolutely beautiful to hear.
Yeah.
Jenn, it has been absolutely fantastic to speak to you today, and I really wish you the best in the future, because you are an absolutely fantastic advocate and a fantastic woman. So thank you so much for sharing your journey today.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to be on the podcast and speaking to all of the people. It's been
Always
wonderful.
a pleasure. I think I'm going to have to get you back on for the Runs Club podcast, and we could talk all about fitness for all
Oh,
the new running challenges we've coming up. Exactly.
yes, let's do that. Let's do that.
Yeah, till we meet again. Jen, thank you again for your time, your honesty, and the incredible work that you do. And to you, thank you so much for listening. If you like the podcast, please share it with someone who you think would benefit. I really, really appreciate the support. And as always, hopefully I'll see you next week. Next week, I'll be having a conversation with Terry Brannigan, a fellow Crohn's and Colitis ambassador for Ireland. Terry was diagnosed with Crohn's disease in her teenage years to get stoma surgery in her 20s. It really is a story about surviving to thriving. I'll see you next week.